All right, welcome YouTube world. Today we are continuing Atomic Habits, book review, book discussion, book reading, whatever you want to call it. We go through these books, we pick books that will help us become better resellers, and we go through those, read, discuss. If you'd like to join the discussion, the link to the live chat is in the chat. Today we will be reading, the next chapter is the first law, make it obvious. We're talking about habits. And then it's chapter 4, the man who didn't look right. It's pretty short, actually. It won't take too long. Short little chapter, the first law. And we just finished up our reseller mastermind, where a series of resellers, we get together, talk about our goals. We talk about ways we can improve. Today we talked about our goals, our schedule, any issues that have come up that have prevented us from reaching our goals. So if you would like to join that, in the we call it the description, I have links to my Patreon group. That's where you'll find these videos plus videos from the mastermind. I'm right now converting it. I'm going to upload today's mastermind call for anybody. You can join the Patreon group, or you can join the Facebook group, and I will drop links to the Zoom videos. We meet Mondays as we start out the week, talking about our weekly reselling mastermind group, and the calls are really good. Valor Milk was on there, and Dumpster Diver Dad was on there today, and we will continue to have those on Mondays. All right, well, I'm gonna go ahead and get straight into it. We're pushing 6 o'clock here for chapter 4. If you're reading along at home, once again, if you want to join the live chat, link is in the comments. All right, where's my pen? I love these pens, by the way. These are this gel pen, this Bic. It writes so smoothly. All right, chapter 4, the man who didn't look right. The psychologist Gary Klein once told me a story about a woman who attended a family gathering. She had spent years working as a paramedic, and upon arriving at the event, took one look at her father-in-law and got very concerned. "I don't like the way you look," she said. Her father-in-law, who was feeling perfectly fine, jokingly replied, "Well, I don't like your looks either." "No," she insisted. You need to go to the hospital now." A few hours later, the man was undergoing life-saving surgery after an examination had revealed that he had a blockage to a major artery and was at immediate risk of a heart attack. Without his daughter-in-law's intuition, he could have died. What did the paramedic see? How did she predict his impending heart attack? When major arteries are obstructed, the body focuses on sending blood to critical organs and away from peripheral locations near the surface of the skin. The result is a change in the patterns of distribution of blood in the face. After many years of working with people with heart failure, this woman had unknowingly developed the ability to recognize the pattern on sight. She couldn't explain what it was that she noticed in her father-in-law's face, but she knew something was wrong. Similar stories exist in other fields. For example, military analysts can identify which blip on a radar screen is an enemy missile and which one is a plane from their own fleet, even though they are traveling at the same speed, flying at the same altitude, and look identical on radar in nearly every aspect. During the Gulf War, Lieutenant Commander Michael Riley saved an entire battleship when he ordered a missile shot down, despite the fact that it looked exactly like the battleship's own planes on radar. He made the right call, but even his superior officers couldn't explain how he did it. Museum curators have been known to discern the difference between an authentic piece of art and an expertly produced counterfeit, even though they can't tell you precisely which details tip them off. Experienced radiologists can look at brain scans and predict the area where a stroke will develop before any obvious signs are visible to the untrained eye. I've even heard of hairdressers noticing whether a client is pregnant based only on the feel of her hair. The human brain is a prediction machine. It is continuously taking in your surroundings and analyzing the information it comes across. Whenever you experience something repeatedly, like a paramedic seeing the face of a heart attack patient or a military analyst seeing a missile on a radar screen, your brain begins noticing what is important, sorting through the details and highlighting the relevant cues and cataloging the information for future use. With enough practice, you can pick up on the cues that predict certain outcomes without consciously thinking about it. Automatically, your brain encodes the lessons learned through experience. We can't always explain what it is we are learning, but learning is happening all along the way, and your ability to notice the relevant cues in a given situation is the foundation for every habit you have. I'm gonna read that last part. I think that was key. Learning is happening all along the way, and your ability to notice the relevant cues in a given situation is the foundation for every habit you have. It makes me think, like today I was out sourcing for shoes, and like when I go through shoes, I go through there pretty quickly. Like I've looked at so many, I guess I'm picking up on cues much faster than the ordinary person. Hey Val, Val was just in our mastermind group. Tell the people, Val, if you think the mastermind group is helpful, maybe they'll join us next time. I think it was pretty good. I'm going to continue. We underestimate how much our brains and bodies can do without thinking. You do not tell your hair to grow, your heart to pump, your lungs to breathe, or your stomach to digest. And yet your body handles all these and more on autopilot. You are much more than your conscious self. Consider hunger. How do you know when you're hungry? You don't necessarily have to see a cookie on the counter to realize that it is time to eat. Appetite and hunger are governed non-consciously. Your body has a variety of feedback loops that gradually alert you when it is time to eat again, and that track what is going on around you and within you. Cravings can arise thanks to hormones and chemicals circulating through your body. Suddenly, you're hungry even though you're not quite sure what tipped you off. This is one of the most surprising insights about our habits. You don't need to be aware for the cue for a habit to begin. You don't need to be aware of the cue for a habit to begin. You can notice an opportunity and take action without dedicating conscious attention to it. This is what makes habits useful. It's also what makes them dangerous. As habits form, your actions come under the direction of your automatic and non-conscious mind. You fall into old patterns before you realize what is happening. Unless someone points it out, you may not notice that you cover your mouth with your hands whenever you laugh, that you apologize before asking a question, or that you have a habit of finishing other people's sentences. And the more you repeat these habits, the less likely you become to question what you're doing and why you're doing it. I once heard of a retail clerk who was instructed to cut up empty gift cards after customers had used up the balance on the card. One day, the clerk cashed out a few customers in a row who purchased with a gift card. When the next person walked up, the clerk swiped the customer's actual credit card, picked up the scissors, and then cut it in half entirely on autopilot before looking up at the stunned customer and realizing what had just happened. Another woman I came across in my research was a former preschool teacher who had switched to a corporate job. Even though she was now working with adults, her old habits would kick in, and she kept asking coworkers if they had washed their hands after going to the bathroom. I also found the story of a man who had spent years working as a lifeguard and would occasionally go, "Walk!" whenever he saw a child running. Over time, the cues that spark our habits become so common that they are essentially invisible. The treats on the kitchen counter, the remote control next to the couch, the phone in the pocket, our responses to these cues are so deeply encoded that it may feel like the urge to act comes from nowhere. For this reason, we must begin the process of behavior change with awareness. Before we can effectively build new habits, we need to get a handle on our current ones. This can be more challenging than it sounds because once a habit is firmly rooted in your life, it is mostly non-conscious and automatic. If a habit remains mindless, you can't expect to improve it. As the psychologist Carl Jung said, until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life and you will call it fate. All right. Val said it's a really good place to get motivated, bounce ideas off each other, and get help with any questions or starting. I highly recommend it. Yeah, we're talking about the mastermind group. Once again, link is down in the description. You can get notified through the Patreon group. You can join my Patreon group. I will be uploading videos there, so if you miss one, you can catch it there. Might even actually upload some on YouTube in the future. And you can also join the free Facebook page and get notified and join our mastermind call. I think they're really good. All right, the next section is the Habit Scorecard. The Japanese railway system is regarded as one of the best in the world. If you ever find yourself riding a train in Tokyo, you'll notice that the conductors have a peculiar habit. As each operator runs the train, they proceed through a ritual of pointing at different objects and calling out commands. When the train approaches a signal, the operator will point out and say, "Signal is green." As the train pulls into and out of each station, the operator will point at the speedometer and call out the exact speed. When it's time to leave, the operator will point at the timetable and state the time. Out on the platform, other employees are performing similar actions. Before each train departs, staff members will point along the edge of the platform and declare, "All clear." Every detail is identified, pointed out, and named. Every detail is identified, pointed out, and named aloud. This process is known as pointing and calling. It is a safety system designed to reduce mistakes. It seems silly, but it works incredibly well. Pointing and calling reduces errors by up to 85% and cuts accidents by 30%. The MTA subway system in New York City adopted a modified version that is point only. And within 2 years of implementation, incidents of incorrectly berthed subways fell 57%. Pointing and calling is so effective because it raises the level of awareness from a non-conscious habit to a more conscious level. I think that's important. Pointing and calling is so effective because it raises the level of awareness from a non-conscious habit to a more conscious level. Because the train operator must use their eyes, hands, mouth, and ears, they are more likely to notice problems before something goes wrong. My wife does something similar. When we are preparing to walk out the door for a trip, she verbally calls out the most essential items in her packing list. "I've got my keys, I've got my wallet, I've got my glasses, I've got my husband." The more automatic a behavior becomes, the less likely we are to consciously think about it. This seems important. The more automatic a behavior becomes, the less likely we are to consciously think about it. And when we've done something 1,000 times before, we begin to overlook things. We assume that the next time will just be like the last. We're so used to doing what we've always done that we don't stop to question whether it's the right thing to do at all. We're so used to doing what we've always done that we don't stop to question whether it's the right thing to do at all. That's kind of interesting. Tying it back to the mastermind group, we were talking about that. Val and I, and then Scott was on there too. We were talking about inventory mistakes and how like we both misplaced inventory, and like if you do things in a certain way without thinking about it, you'll just keep doing those things. But I think the one of the key points of the mastermind reseller group is to let's look at these processes, right? How are we doing our inventory? Do we have an SKU system? What does that look like specifically? And that's why I just was thinking about. It says we're so used to doing what we've always done that we don't stop to question whether it's the right thing to do at all. So I think periodically, and that's where the mastermind call comes in, that we need to look at how we're doing things as a reseller or whatever you're doing in life, right? But as a reseller, and let's try to analyze it. Is there a better way? Can we make a little improvement to make it a little better? All right, let me get back to this. Many of our failures in performance are largely attributed to a lack of self-awareness. One of our greatest challenges in changing habits is maintaining awareness of what we are actually doing. This helps explain why the consequences of bad habits can sneak up on us. Point we don't point and call system for our personal lives. That's the origin of the Habit Scorecard, which is a simple exercise you can use to become more aware of your behavior. To create your own, make a list of your daily habits. Here's a sample of where your list might start. And so there's their list. Could be, all right, here's the example list. Wake up, turn off alarm, check my phone, go to the bathroom, weigh myself, take a shower, brush my teeth, floss my teeth, put on deodorant, hang up towel to dry, get dressed, make a cup of tea, and so on. Once you have a full list, look at each behavior and ask yourself, is this a good habit, a bad habit, or a neutral habit? If it's a good habit, write a plus sign next to it. If it's a bad habit, write a negative sign. If it's a neutral habit, write an equal sign. For example, the list above might look like this. Wake up. Let me see. All right, let me look at the symbols again. All right. Wake up, neutral. Turn off alarm, neutral. Check my phone, negative. Go to the bathroom, neutral. Weigh myself, positive. Take a shower, positive. Brush my teeth, positive. Floss my teeth, positive. Put on deo, positive. Hang up towel to dry, neutral. Get dressed, neutral. Make a cup of tea, positive. I really like this, and I'm going to challenge Val and whoever out there is listening. Let's do this. Let's make it, like maybe tomorrow or one day this week, make a list of all of your habits, like from the time you get up, and let's do this. Let's do the positive, the neutral, the negative. So we become aware, we become conscious of our habits. And that's in our reselling group, our mastermind. That's what we were talking about today too. I wrote up my schedule very specifically. And that's kind of the point, is to be conscious of your time and what you're doing. I think it kind of ties into this. The marks you give to a particular habit will depend on your situation and your goals. For someone who is trying to lose weight, eating a bagel with peanut butter every morning might be a bad habit. That sounds good, though. I like bagels and I like peanut butter. Yum, yum, yum. All right. For someone who is trying to bulk up and add muscle, that same behavior might be a good habit. It all depends on what you're working towards. And that's your goals, right? It makes me think of Napoleon Hill's Think and Grow Rich. Your goals would kind of guide that. Scoring your habits can be a bit more complex for another reason as well. The labels good habit and bad habit are slightly inaccurate. There are no good habits or bad habits. There are only effective habits. That is, effective at solving problems. All habits serve you in some way, even the bad ones, which is why you repeat them. That's important. All habits serve you in some way, even the bad ones, which is why you repeat them. For this exercise, categorize your habits by how they will benefit you in the long run. So when you're doing this, you got to kind of think about, what are your goals, right? Like, what are you trying to achieve? Because if that habit is going to benefit you or not, it's going to depend on where you're trying to get, right? Generally speaking, good habits will net positive outcomes. Bad habits have net negative outcomes. Smoking a cigarette may reduce stress right now. That's how it's serving you. But it's not a healthy long-term behavior. If you're still having trouble determining how to rate a particular habit, here's a question I like to use. Does this behavior help me become the type of person I wish to be? Does this habit cast a vote for or against my desired identity? Habits that reinforce your desired identity are usually good. Habits that conflict with your desired identity are usually bad. As you create your habit scorecard, there is no need to change anything at first. The goal is simply to notice what is actually going on, observe your thoughts and actions without judgment or internal criticism. Don't blame yourself for your faults. Don't praise yourself for your successes. If you eat a chocolate bar every morning, acknowledge it almost as if you were watching someone else. Oh, how interesting that they would do such a thing. For Val, that might be pickles. If you binge eat, simply notice that you're eating more calories than you should. If you waste time online, notice that you are spending your life in a way that you do not want to. The first step to changing bad habits is to be on the lookout for them. Let me repeat that. The first step to changing bad habits is to be on the lookout for them. If you feel like you need extra help, then you can try pointing and calling in your own life. Say out loud the action that you are thinking of taking and what the outcome will be. If you want to cut back on your junk food habit, but notice yourself grabbing another cookie, say out loud, I'm about to eat this cookie, but I don't need it. Eating it will cause me to gain weight and hurt my health. This is funny. I'll try that. Hearing your bad habits spoken aloud makes the consequences seem more real. It adds weight to the action rather than letting yourself mindlessly slip into an old routine. This approach is useful even if you're simply trying to remember a task on your to-do list. Just saying out loud, tomorrow I need to go to the post office after lunch, increases the odds that you'll actually do it. You're getting yourself to acknowledge the need for action, and that can make all the difference. I do that all the time. I think I get on my wife's nerves and other people's nerves. Like I'm always speaking out like the things I have to do. So it's good to know that that's a good thing. The process of behavior change always starts with awareness. Strategies like pointing and calling and the habit scorecard are focused on getting you to recognize your habits and acknowledge the cues that trigger them, which makes it possible to respond in a way that benefits you. All right, chapter summary. I told you this one was short. With enough practice, your brain will pick up on the cues that predict certain outcomes without consciously thinking about it. Once our habits become automatic, we stop paying attention to what we are doing. The process of behavior change always starts with awareness. You need to be aware of your habits before you can change them. You need to be aware of your habits before you can change them. That's one of the key takeaways. Pointing and calling raises your level of awareness from a non-conscious habit to a more conscious level by verbalizing your actions. The habit scorecard is a simple exercise you can use to become more aware of your behavior. All right, so I challenge you guys to create your own scorecard. Once again, we talked about this a few minutes ago, where you write down your habits and then you put a plus, minus, or neutral sign next to each. And I guess next Monday when we read the next chapter, which is chapter 5, the best way to start a new habit, we can then look at our habits. So we got to become aware. I'm going to try to do this I'm trying. That's giving me wiggle room. I'm going to do this tomorrow. I'm going to do my habit scorecard. Should be interesting. All right, that's the end of the chapter. Anybody got any comments, questions, thoughts? That's what I was used to say when I was teaching. Questions. I'd actually make my students come up with questions. I would show them, like demonstrate, like metacognitively how to create questions, and then they would have to write down questions and present. Any questions, thoughts? I will say this, like, I think that makes total sense, right? Like if you're going to make better habits and change bad habits, then these habits are all designed to get you where you want to go. If you're not aware of your habits, how can you change them, right? So I think that's important. Like if you're like the example of the phone, right? Like I used to do that. Like I used to get up, my first thing is check my phone, and that's a bad habit in my opinion. Like I replace that with like one of the first things I do is I read my Bible scriptures each morning. I'm doing a read through the Bible plan, and that's one of the first things I do. Like as I'm drinking my cup of coffee, I think I would consider that a better habit because that's something I want to achieve. And obviously, when we think about these habits, we can look at them through a reseller perspective as well. And since we just talked about goals in our mastermind group, like mine is to get 50 items listed, Val's is 75, Scott's is 15 for next week. Where we need habits. I think like we created a schedule, or at least some of us did. I know Val has a schedule on her whiteboard. I just wrote out a schedule during our mastermind. And I think having the schedule and then creating habits to make sure that those schedules actually get done. And like thinking about one of Val's questions was about measuring and listing and like how to speed that up and to do measurements. And my suggestion was to batch them up, right? Like if you got a lot of different clothing items, like maybe get 10 dresses and do those all at once. And you have your measuring type, like you develop a habit of how you measure it and you're doing the same thing. So that habit becomes almost unconscious. And then you switch over to pants and that looks a certain way. I think that's like a practical use of these habits that we're learning about theoretically. And then as we begin to implement those into our lives. All right, since no questions from Val, and Val's the only one talking, thanks, Val, for supporting the channel. And any other viewers out there, thanks for dropping by. I think I'm going to do an old school thrift haul video. I did go thrifting today. My goal is, I think, tomorrow to create that, and I'm gonna do a habit of a what sold video on Thursdays. So those are a couple habits. I'm again to have at least 2 videos a week. All right, Val said it was hard at first, but my daily listening to turn habit. Exactly, that's great. All right, like habits can be difficult at first, but then they just become a habit. We don't really have to think of them. We just get them done. That's good. Tomorrow is photographing day, so I'll try the tip you suggested. Yeah, let me know how it goes, and just kind of think about that, the habits, and how can you create your workspace to make it most efficient. Like Chris Taylor comments big on that, like where's your tape measure going to be? Like you have everything like organized in a specific way, and then as you do it, like create that habit of doing it in a certain order that works best for you. And yeah, a thrift haul video. I scored some really good shoes today. So I think I will create that video tomorrow. That will be in my YouTube schedule, which I give myself a little bit of time, a couple times a week to do on that. All right, guys, with that being said, thanks for dropping by. Let's become aware of those habits. By the way, smash the like button. Helps out the channel. Consider subscribing if you like reseller content and learning to be better resellers and better humans in general. That's what my shirt says, be a better human, be a better human. Okay. All right, until next time, have a good one, guys. I'm out. Peace.